Well, good afternoon and welcome everyone to OnyxPearls8 Women in Business segment. My name is Tony Parks and I am here today with the lovely Mary Young, and we're going to be talking about women in business, which is what we do, and reflecting on what it takes to be in business and not being discouraged by the challenges that come along with it, but celebrating the victories and allowing the victories to carry us to continue to pursue our passions. So once again, welcome Mary to OnyxPearls8 Women in Business section. And I'm so glad to have you. And why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself?
Okay, I am Mary Young. I am presently a talent development consultant. I have taken on many roles throughout my career. I went to the University of Florida post high school, in which I got my bachelor's in education and my master's in education, specializing in literacy. I went on to teach for about 7 years before moving into the corporate training sector. I presently work at Navy Federal as a full-time employee, as well as leading a business. So I'm managing Empower Talent Development Consultants as well. And so as that transition right into Navy Federal, my passion for educational leadership continued. So I went to the University of West Florida and pursued a second master's in educational leadership. And really just the journey around teaching and understanding corporate dynamics, it really shaped where I am, right now with Empower, and it kind of fueled that desire to not only continue leading others in an educational space, but also being able to kind of tailor that space as a consultant. So presently, I am kind of doing a little bit of both. I support Navy Federal as a product strategist, leading a training division at the moment, helping support a training division, as well as managing Empower. And it's just a privilege and honor to be with you all today.
Okay, awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about Empower Talent Development Consultants, LLC, which you launched in 2021. Congratulations. And I'm always so excited to see our women branch out into following their passion. That's why God put us here. He put in us a vision. And when we connect to that vision, we are empowered to help so many others and not just ourselves. So I'm really excited for you to tell us about Empower Talent Development Consultants. First and foremost, I want to focus on the services, okay? So from what I understand, you help in training and development, coaching, and consultation. Now, you do this for both companies, corporations, as well as individuals. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. So any of the inventories that you that I'll mention. So I lead a host of self-assessments, personality inventories, skill gap analysis. Anything that I offer to a company, I can also offer to an individual. I am a certified professional coach, which means that I have the capacity to support individuals with career change as well as life change. That's something that I'm very passionate about. So any of the inventories that I specialize in, along with skill gap analysis, Lominger competency identification, I support businesses with. And I would say that career development happens to be one of my areas of passion and purpose as well, because I really am engaged in helping people find their right seat. Understanding, I don't have to just do a job, but I really want to be fulfilled in the role that I occupy. And so that's one of the passions that is really near and dear to my heart when we think about Empower, is helping businesses arrive at the right solutions, but also helping individuals arrive at the right solutions.
Okay, so help me understand how from businesses to individual clients, bridging the two together, how do your behavioral components that you use here, both DISC, MBTI, and Lominger competency identification systems, how do those play a role in bridging the two together, where you marry together both the business as well as an employee consultant, so forth, so on and so forth, to where they both prosper?
Oh, that's an awesome question. So when we think about those inventories, Myers-Briggs, DISC, even the emotional intelligence index, they all have a specific nature. And if I had to use an analogy, I was a track star. I want to say I was a track star, right? There are individual sports that you can run. There are individual races and there's team races. The inventories that I just spoke to, they really help optimize team performance. So I could be a great 400 runner individually, but if I'm on the 4x4, it's important that all of us are running fast in order for us to win the race. And so when we think about the emotional intelligence inventory, for example, it's made up of 16 competencies that help individuals identify where they are, how they are showing up in the midst of their team. So there are different competencies that are measured, and those competencies range from things like self-awareness, autonomy, different capacities are measured. And once we look at those singular composites, we have individual discussions around how behaviors and how team members are showing up. That directly impacts the whole. So oftentimes we have individuals on our team and they're assertive, and their assertiveness is very, very high, which is a good thing in certain environments. But when you're in a team dynamic, you have to know how to assert your assertion back and dial it up, almost kind of like a radio, a frequency board, if you were, managing sound in a large conference room. So when we start thinking about personality inventories and emotional intelligence, it really speaks to self-awareness. And when we see individuals lacking self-awareness, they disrupt team dynamics at large. We have lots of attitudes, lots of personality challenges. Molly doesn't get along with Susie. Susie doesn't get along with Beth. And there's a lot of clash in team dynamics. But when we're able to measure, inform others around how they're showing up, and they become accountable to that information, they may walk into a room highly assertive, but they recognize, I'm in a room with executive vice president. I should probably dial my assertion back. So they use the information around personalities. They use the information around who they show up as, how they are showing up, and they start to self-manage. So the beauty in personality inventories, behavioral assessments, is that the more we know, the more information we're accountable to. And that gives us tools to self-manage when we're in unique situations. And really, when we think about self-management, that's really discipline. That is saying, I have something to say, but this might not be the setting. I have something to add, but maybe I need to think about how I want to phrase it. And oftentimes, the tools that I'm giving leaders help their teams bring synergy, brings understanding, also brings a sense of, wow, now I understand why you do the things that you do. So it kind of starts to really break down conflict dynamics that might be taking place. So I love those inventories. I'm glad you brought them up. I can talk about them all day.
Well, I love it. And I love talking about, especially emotional intelligence. I love it both from the team perspective, the business perspective, but it plays a huge role in our personal lives as well. And to be able to bridge the two, I think brings you into a healthy place of transitioning from home to business on any given day, any given moment. I think when we come to a place where we do have a better understanding of who we are individually, for instance, I know me, I can't go out here and say, okay, I'm going to replace your roof. That's not Tony, because Tony's going to pick up the phone and I'm going to call a roofer and I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to contract you out to do this job, and I'm going to pay you so much of what they've paid me to get you in here and do this. So my point is saying that a lot of times I think our overall happiness comes from making sure that we have a conducive relationship, both whether we are an employee, a business owner, or even individually in our personal interactions with other people. So when you teach your emotional intelligence, I really want to reflect on that a little bit. In working with teaching that, how do you take a supervisor and an employee, and they have a particular conflict, and you may have a supervisor that's overwhelmed. They have different processes that, considering what's happened with COVID, you have a lot of businesses that are changing their processes and changing the dynamics on how they function. So from a managerial perspective, I understand that we get overwhelmed. And it's not intentional when we have interactions with our employees that may not be the most, how can I put it, pleasant way to deal with them. How does emotional intelligence for both parties play a role into that?
Oh, that's a great question.
Repairing that issue.
Right. So one of the things that I should say about emotional intelligence, all of the inventories that we've described, I think are valuable. But when we know self, it really gives us a sense of empowerment, not to kind of, just use that word or abuse that word. But there are a lot of things, like your example, I know my lane and I can operate in it. But it also expresses or exposes areas that we're not strong. And so as a leader, for example, if there is a challenge with my interpersonal savvy, I'm a great leader, I can lead well, but for some reason, I don't necessarily always articulate things well, I don't partner well, there are things that I could do better. There are tools, right? When I know self, I can work to build relationships, I can build, different capacities so that I can be stronger in composites in which I'm weak. So before I say, how do we address the problem with the boss and the individual contributor that might not be getting along? The first start is to know self. Know self, know right before I go into any interaction, I'm typically really strong at this. These are some areas that are kind of hot buttons for me, and I need to be careful. I need to be mindful. I may need to take support when we go into these environments because this is not necessarily a strength of mine. And when the employee knows self and the leader knows self, and the employee and the leader are sharing that knowledge, right? So imagine, Tony, you're my boss, and I say, I'm really having trouble with presentation skills. And I would like to be better. I would like to be more confident in this space, but I'm giving you this information because I want you to help me develop this. And you, as a leader in some capacities, can say, I've had challenges where I've had to bring in tools or resources to strengthen myself around a composite, and you become kind of vulnerable. So there is a little bit of that, right? That has to happen. There's some vulnerability in saying, I'm not, and I haven't always been good at this, right? But it builds trust. It builds trust. And I think that that's one of the dynamics. So it's knowing self at both levels, the supervisor understanding self, the individual understanding self. And then once we start using those composites as tools, we know where we are showing up, we know how we show up, we can then adapt our behavior in the midst of others. And I'll be honest with you, I've actually led conversations when I start a new job, when I meet a leader for the first time. Within the first 3 meetings, I'm often saying to them, these are my expectations. These are my strengths. These are things that I want to be very clear, because knowing self gives you strength in self. And when I didn't know all these different things about myself, I didn't have all these inventories and composites as tools. What I often did was I would go in environments, and I'll be completely honest, I was a little exposed because I didn't really know my weaknesses. I didn't know how to articulate them, and it showed up as insecurity. And now I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at. And I go confidently in spaces and train people that are 3 levels higher, make probably millions more than me, but I know Mary, I know myself. And that confidence came from really a real strong understanding of what I'm good at, what I'm not good at, and then learning to just operate in that lane. I have no problem telling a leader, telling a colleague or a friend, that's a really great assignment. That's a great task. These are my skills. These are the things I'm really good at. these are the things I'm working to be better at. And I think this person might be best for this task because it aligns with their skills. So all of these composites, it gives you that sense of understanding of self, and it helps you present yourself in such a way that you can really be confident in a room, right? And really own how you show up, and not necessarily be insecure or worried about having to fake it. You know, fake it till you make it good until you don't have it to fake. And then it's not good to fake, fake it till you make it. That becomes a problem. So yeah, being your authentic self and really understanding that. So that I think is one of those things that with leadership dynamics, supervisor to employee level, building trust, knowing self, and then getting to a point where you can communicate openly about each other's strengths and opportunities, I think that helps forge a stronger bond on a team and builds out that team with greater team dynamics.
Absolutely. Let me ask you a question. How does your consultation services, how can you integrate that with our evolving corporate America? We know that right now we have a lot of evolution going on in corporate America as far as diversity and inclusion. And I just see, your empowered talent consultant company coming in and saying, hey, we can help with this area as well. Give us an idea of how you would come into a company that has had challenges with diversity and inclusion in the past and want to implement that and want to form that bond and that relationship with their employees.
Wonderful question. Every encounter with empowered talent development starts with a needs assessment, a needs analysis, scope analysis discussion. So that is kind of where we begin as client, in our client relationship. And what the service will really give me insight in is how to tailor whatever service we decide on to you as the client. So we start with a consultation. And during that consultation, I am leading a needs, a skill gap analysis. I'm asking you questions about your team. I'm asking you questions about realities you would like to see. It may sound like I'm asking you to dream. What is present state? What is future state? What do you believe is going to take to get there? And what is the timeline? What is the timeline that you would like to see these outcomes realized? And so then I ask these questions, and that builds a framework for us arriving at the solution you just described to me. And in some instances, when we do a needs analysis or a scope analysis, we really have to get in there and lead some observations to see the dynamics of the team. When you speak of diversity and inclusion, I was recently asked to lead a diversity and inclusion session. And truthfully, I said, because diversity and inclusion is such a broad topic, I said to the client, I would like to lead a needs analysis, and we want to rank and prioritize the topics that you would like me to discuss. We can talk about allyship, we can talk about microaggressions, we can talk about, compliance training. We could go so many different directions when it relates to diversity and inclusion, fragility, there are just, it's really, really broad. And so I wanted to make sure that the solution we arrive at is the solution the client is most happy with. So when we think about diversity and inclusion, it's not one of those things that you can put a Band-Aid on.
Right.
Empower likes to approach it from the perspective of we identify needs, and then we present a plan of attack. So that plan of attack may be a quarterly training, or a series of discussions, a focus group, a book club, a combination of all the things that I just mentioned to really get into the dynamics and the culture of the team, because those trainings should not be a hit and then a miss, a box check, right? We really want to make sure that we're leading discussions to change behavior. And when you do that, you have to make sure there is a plan of consistency and follow-up, so that we're not just checking a box, but we really are implementing solutions that drive behavior change. So I think that the easy answer is it depends on the client. It really does.
But so again, we have to open ourselves up to even professional vulnerability when do we start, if we get into a relationship with you, we have to be prepared for that.
Right.
And I think
And
that's extremely important right now.
Yeah. And I love that. I want people to feel safe in my presence as a client. I'm not lost to the fact that we have some teams that are struggling. Some teams are, the storm, norm, form, they're constantly in a state of change and they may be storming. I get that. And then we have people that are kind of merging, and there's different evolutions teams go through. So when I hear a leader say, with courage, my team is not in a good place, that just makes my heart so happy. Yeah. Because then we know how to address the problem. And it's nothing that a leader should be ashamed of, because just as our children grow and mature and go through changes, so do our businesses, so do our teams. Recognizing their stage of development is the first hurdle, right? And helping them get through that development phase.
Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit before we wrap up. I want to ask you a question. Tell the people about one challenge that you have faced in having started Empowered Talent Development Consultants, transitioning into having a business, a beautiful family, ministry, a career. What are some of the challenges, or maybe one specific challenge that you faced, and how did you resolve that?
This is another great question. I think that others will relate that the biggest challenge that I have faced is myself. I am a hyperachiever on all the inventories and I am results oriented. And so enough is never enough. The max is never the max. And I find myself wanting to do more and sometimes not setting realistic goals for myself, and being disappointed when my unrealistic goals aren't met. And so I recently instituted a staff employee development day. And that employee development day consists of self-care. It consists of, oftentimes it starts with, it would be, if I had a team of 300 people, what I would do often for my team. We have breakfast, we meet, we goal set, we ideate, we plan very intentionally, give ourselves mentally space to breathe and just really zone out and set goals. And then from there, I assess the goals. I assess, are they realistic? And then I look at the 3, the 6, the 9, and 12-month plan frequently. So I say I've been the biggest challenge, because you can be too aggressive with goal setting, and then you can be too passive with goal setting if you're not careful as a business owner. And I'll be honest, I've fallen into both of those categories from time to time. So I measure that. I have mentors, I have colleagues, prayer partners that I surround myself with that hold me accountable to my goals, that hold me accountable. I also go to therapy. I believe in therapy. That's a box that I just signed up for. Yes. Yes, I believe in therapy. I talk to a neutral third party about things that I'm facing, that I'm challenged with, and I commit to self-care. And I think that those aren't answers. I'm still my biggest problem. And I could say that it's hard being a woman in business. It's hard being a Black woman in business. It's hard overcoming certain dynamics when you're a mom and a wife and all of these things. But at the end of the day, everything goes back to discipline. We do what we want to do. We commit to what we want to commit to. And the outcomes of our lives are a reality of the patterns that we set for ourselves. So that's a hard truth, because I like Krispy Kreme too. I want to eat the donut and not see the weight gain, right? So we have to change habits sometimes.
Exactly. And I'm very glad that you brought up the therapy portion of it, because I am big on therapy. And when I'm speaking with women and some of my mentees or what have you, one of the first things that I tell them, if I know that they are not connected, find you a good therapist. And it is imperative. And I tell people, I said, I look forward to my sessions with my therapist because as a businesswoman, a mother, a woman that's in ministry, having a career, all of that, I look forward to that moment of just being able to unload. And we need that. We have to have that. So I'm so glad you brought that up. Now, let me ask you this. Since starting your company, what has been your greatest victory?
Oh, wow. Every time I connect with a new client, I feel like I'm learning more about a new friend. It's an extension of myself. And God has just blown my mind. I'm big on godly partnerships. And so nothing forced, right? God is going to send every client that is supposed to be an empower client directly to me. And so there will be things that I haven't even yet prayed about. And I'll get a text or my phone will ring and someone will say, like recently, I said, I can't wait to train DE and I have all these ideas. I really want to train. And then it was like, no sooner than I said that in my head, someone reached out and said, we're looking for a session and we want you to train, be our consultant. It was almost like God manifested that. And so I think that's been the biggest thing, is watching God just reveal himself in so many ways through this business and for others, right? Everything that we do has purpose attached to it. Nothing just happens to us. Nothing.
That's right.
And not even the people we're connected to, right?
Exactly.
So when God sends you a client, it's an opportunity for you to serve at a greater level. He's giving you purpose. He's giving you that connection. And so those divine connections, godly partnerships, people that are sent, it's been blowing my mind. And it's so rewarding. It's taken my faith even to a new level, So it's been a blessing, a real blessing.
I'll tell you, I call them kingdom connections. And I absolutely love them because, as you stated, you literally see God in the midst of the vision that he's giving you. And you get to see it unfold, and you get to see him in all of his glory. And really, I know for me, sometimes I sit back and I think, I'm like, oh my goodness, you're doing this for me. Oh, I have got to be your baby. I know I am. I'm like, but he's so integrated. He has to be integrated into everything that we do. And I think that when we maintain those godly connections, even though we will come against challenges, our victories in those individuals that God connects us with really help us overcome the challenges that we will face in business. And I think it's important for women to understand that we are mothers, we are wives, we are sisters, we are daughters, we are all of those things. And being in business takes away none of that. It really takes away none of that, especially when your business has been ordained by God.
Oh, yes. Yes. It's funny that you mentioned that. This has been in my spirit probably for a few months now. God has just been reminding me that, as Adam and Eve were given the garden, that the initial intent for man was not to strive. And there are moments that I've been thinking about, this business and everything that is related to it, even my life. And God didn't place me here to strive, to stress, to worry, but to enjoy his creation, to enjoy my gifts, to bring glory to him through my gifts. And so whenever a client relationship happens, I earnestly pray for that client. I pray for those that are going to be in that training session, that are going to sit in the audience, that God utilizes whatever I do with that client to transform not just the business, but the individuals' lives that are present. And so it becomes more than a needs analysis, a scope analysis, a consultation. They become truly a part of my prayer time, about a part of because through that interaction, I'm getting so much spiritual fulfillment, personal fulfillment, and I'm seeing God unfold himself through the practice, right? Just what I get to do, my gift. And so that striving almost just goes away, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because he's sending who he wants to send, and it's going to work out the way it's intended. So it's just such a blessing that we have a father that just, you know, is
Yeah.
looking out for us all the time, all the time.
And it is, I think it's a wonderful, wonderful feeling to know that you are within the will of God. And
Yes.
when you operate in your gifts, I always say he sends me these little sticky notes. And on the little sticky notes, they remind me, okay, you're walking according to my will that I've set forth for
Yes.
you. And because of that, you have no option but to prosper.
That's
And
it.
everything that we do in business, I always say, if what you do is not a benefit to build someone else, it's not being done as unto God. Because God
Yes.
expects us to go out and he expects us to multiply. So every gift that he gives us ought to multiply and build up someone else. And so that's
Wow.
why I get so excited. And I can never stop saying this about seeing women of God come into business, because I understand that when a woman of God steps into business, she steps into her godly purpose. She doesn't just step
Yes.
in just doing something because the world says, oh, you should start this business or you should start this. No, she's stepping into her gift and she's stepping into her purpose that God has set before her. And I think it makes it easier. The challenges even come easier when you know that you're within his will, because you know that he's already formulated a plan in order for you to overcome the challenges.
Yes. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So many rich nuggets in what you shared. And something that I was meditating on a few months ago. I changed some things around in my career and some goals. I'm always thinking, and I had this moment where I was almost discouraged. And I listened to, I want to say it was a podcast, and there was a quote in it, and I've been just soaking it up. And it says, when things don't work out as I expected, it's because they're working out better than I could have even imagined. And do you know, I caught a hold to that thing. And I mean, I started quoting that thing. Things are working out better than I even imagined. And I'll say it sometimes I'm driving. Things are working out better than I even imagined. And God starts running ahead of those words and getting in the way of my plans and throwing me all kinds of new curveballs that were better than I even imagined. And so I just want to encourage whoever may watch this, sometimes when things aren't working out the way you had thought, it's because God's plan is better than you even imagined. And what he's sending you is just so much bigger than what you might have been hoping for. And so keep that expectancy. I've just watched God amaze me. And so I love what you shared. It's so awesome. He just gets in all our business, doesn't he?
I absolutely agree with you. Okay, so as we close, drop a nugget or two for another woman who's considering going into business. What would you tell her?
I would tell her that someone is waiting on the gift that God placed on the inside of you, and that your complacency could be holding up their deliverance. So unleash the gift that God has placed on the inside of you. To you, you think, oh, I have another month or another year. But to the person you're called to, they're desperately with anticipation waiting on you to move now. So don't delay, get to work, get excited about what God has given you, that idea that you think, oh, maybe that won't make me much money. Get to work. Someone is waiting on you. Just you as your gift, they're waiting to be your client. Nobody else is going to reach them. You are called to them. So get to work.
I love that. Love that. Now tell the people how they can get in touch with you.
All right. So I have a couple of ways that you can contact me. If you want to call me or text message me for a consultation, you can definitely use My business cell is 850-417-5597. You can also email me directly at justmari21@msn.com. Those are two forms of contact. If you reach me by cell, I would like you to text me first, just so I know that what you're reaching out about. I'm so excited to partner with you. I'm so looking forward to an opportunity to connect and to serve you. And I can't wait to hear from you.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you, Mary, for coming to hang out with OnyxPearls8. We have really enjoyed you. And I know, ladies, get with her. She is a dynamic person. And I know that she will direct you in the path that you need to go for your business relationships. So please contact her. We are all about making kingdom connections. And that's what this and all of these interviews are about, so that we can connect women together to help build one another. Okay. So that's Empowered Talent Development Consultants, LLC, Mrs. Mary Young. And we thank you. Everyone have a wonderful, blessed afternoon, and we'll see you next time.